Angels weeping for her children. Angels weeping. Somehow someone's got to save them. Save the children. And if you say that love the answer, why don't we begin? Or will we just end?
Hi, I'm Evelyn Polk. Welcome to Visions for a Child's Heart. Today we are offset and we are in Orlando, Florida, and I'm here talking to a wonderful young man that I've met just in about the past 5 months.
Yes.
Has become very dear to my heart, and in our talking, I found out that we have another special connection, and you're going to have an opportunity to spend time with both of us in a few weeks when we're going to be doing our Foster Pride Empowerment Workshop to be held here in Vallejo, Vallejo, California. So today I welcome you to Mr. Wade Randolph.
It is such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Great, great. Well, let's just jump right into it. When we first met, we talked and just shared some ideas, but then later on, you shared something about your childhood that really touched my heart. And I understand you were a foster child at some point in your life.
Yes, you know, Evelyn, interesting enough, and that's a part that I regularly don't share with people. So obviously you touched me in a way that I was really open to do that. What transpired in my life, probably when I was age 5 or 6, is that my mom had to give us up for adoption. And I knew that, I recognized that, but it was the unspoken conversation in my house. And for years, I never spoke of that, and I told myself my reality of what the real events I thought had happened.
Now, you said you realized that. At what point did you realize? Because you said you were 2 when that first happened.
Well, when I will tell you I was 2, and I realized that the people I was with at the age of maybe 6 or 7, I'm trying to remember back, were not my real parents.
Biological parents?
Yes. Yes, they were not my biological parents. They were in my family, but I knew because there was a separation, there was a conversation that they would have about my mom that they never really had in my presence.
Okay. But you had privy to that information indirectly.
Well, at that time I had 3 other brothers, and they were all older than me. And they knew where my mom was. They knew who she was. And they knew exactly what she was doing. But I didn't, because I was the youngest. Okay. And because of that, gave me some interesting challenges.
So what was your perception of what was going on?
Oh, wow. You know, perception can be an interesting thing. When you don't know the truth, you start making up a truth.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, because that's what happens with a lot of our young people.
Yeah. I made up a truth, a philosophy in my mind that we were giving up because my mom didn't want us. That became my truth, that became my reality, and that became my story.
So basically, like there's a woman somewhere that did not want me. Did you have a picture of who she was?
No, I didn't have a picture. I didn't really have I gave an imaginary picture. I had a concept of what type of woman she was. Okay. But that was all my hallucination. Right. All of my fantasy world.
Right. And primarily because there was no one to give you a valid truth about that.
My brothers, who were 7 and 8 years older than me, they knew. But that wasn't a conversation that we ever had. Wow. Because they truly, even though we had an age difference, They truly didn't understand what I was going through, and my connection to the people that we lived with was a connection, but not a family connection.
So was it an extended family?
It was extended family. They were family members that had brought us into
Like
their
cousins,
house.
or-
I want to say maybe aunts on my father's side, and my father passed, so I really didn't get to know him at length. But they were on my father's side, and they brought us in. But again, it was that unspoken conversation that everyone knew it existed. Everyone knew it was there.
But no one talked about it?
No one wanted to touch it.
Wow. And you said that your mother, and you used the term, gave you up for adoption, and I really prefer to use the term relinquished because it's more of an intentional act with a plan as opposed to just giving up. And I think that adds to some of the emotional pain for a child who has been placed for placement elsewhere. But you said for adoption, so was it for adoption or for foster care? Were you placed for adoption or placed for
And that's an interesting question. That's a question that I can't answer. That's a question that I haven't been interested once I came upon the reality of what transpired in my background that was not of interest or pursuit.
That's interesting. So at what age did it become factual or real that, okay, this is what's happened, that was actually verbalized?
It was verbalized when my biological mom came back to say, I want my kids.
And how old were you then?
I want to say I was probably about 9 years old
Okay.
when this strange woman came back into my life and said, you're my son and I'm your mom.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
We remained with her until I became an adult and moved out.
Okay.
And it's interesting, when you go into an environment like that, you can see the similarities of what you have with another person. You can see the facial makeup. You see the physical makeup, and you know that that person is a part of you and you're a part of that person.
So you recognize that
Yes.
I've got something in common with this lady.
Yes.
Okay, so there must be some connection that I don't know about. So there's I guess sort of more of a tendency to relate on some level.
There's a point that unconsciously you just know. It's hard to explain, but you just know that this is someone that's a part of your family.
Okay. So still, no one is explaining to you
No.
why you've gone to live with this lady.
No.
Let me back up. You said that there's some similarities. Was the lifestyle different living with her?
The lifestyle was very different. Where we came from and the people we used to live with, I think we used to get assistance. And their lifestyle was not, I won't say poor, but their lifestyle was completely not as quote-unquote materialistic, wasn't as plentiful as the new lifestyle that we came into.
Okay.
But interesting enough, my mom was a single woman. And she took care of us 3 boys and worked to ensure that we had a lifestyle that was beyond the one that we left.
Wow. Now that's interesting
Yeah.
because in most situations, people assume that they were placed outside of the home to be better taken care of than to be with their biological parents, and it ended up being the reverse.
It ended up being the reverse, not because... It ended up being the reverse because she demanded to give us a lifestyle that she could see that we were comfortable with.
Okay.
And I found that interesting.
Wow. So during the time that you were living with her, how long before the two of you ever had any dialogue about what had happened?
Again, being so young, I accepted it. I accepted being in this new environment because my brothers accepted it. I accepted it because when you're coming from a lower lifestyle to a better lifestyle.
Why question it?
Why should you question it?
Mhm.
I knew that I was in a better environment, a better space. Why would you want to question
In
it?
terms of provision. And, my thing is, the child's heart. How was your heart during those times?
My heart grew because this lady, this stranger who is my mom that came back into my life, demanded something of me. She demanded a vision for me to develop and to ensure that we always used to set the table, and sometimes, like any young person, I wouldn't do homework and things of that nature. And when she would get home, she would say, "You're going to do your homework because I want you to make something of yourself." That was the motto that was our mantra around the house, especially to me.
Wow. And it sounds like that gave you a sense of value, that you were valued and loved.
A sense of value, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, to say that regardless what I encountered, she installed something in me that would help me move forward. Yeah.
Did you get that from the other family?
I didn't get that. I got a sense that they were comfortable with where they were financially and also within the environment that they were in.
But you didn't really sense that they were invested into you?
No, there wasn't investment.
Okay. Did you ever have any contact with them after you went back to your biological mom?
I have only a faint memory of them.
Wow.
I never had any more contact. I think the greatest contact, again, taking into account of my age, the greatest contact they had was with my brothers, because my brothers knew them.
Okay.
I really didn't know them.
Now, your brothers, is there ever any discussion about that now?
My brothers have passed.
Both of them?
Yes. So I have one brother left, and he's the guy I rely on for take me back to what happened here. Because his memory is such clearer and more deeper in those days than mine.
Okay.
But not to the point that my two older brothers.
Okay. So some of that is still vague
Yes, very
to you
vague.
back there. Because ages from 2 to 9, that's a very formative time of life, and there's a lot of things going on.
Only formative if you are embracing that time in your life. For me, I really didn't embrace that because it was difficult. It was tough. It was tough times for us.
What do you recall as being the toughest?
I remember sometimes, like any young person, you look forward to the holidays. You look forward to the Christmases and getting those packages and those presents. We didn't always get those presents. But the lady, my mom, that came and got us, regardless of what she had to do, what type of work and how long she had to work, she made sure that we had presents underneath the tree. She made sure that if I wanted, back then my biggest thing was a G.I. Joe. She made sure that Joe was underneath the tree.
All right.
So there was a different level of giving that I was experiencing versus the house I came from.
And with that, because a lot of times kids are sort of taught that the more somebody gives you, the more they love you. But it wasn't just the fact that she gave you those things. It sounds like it was the attitude and the spirit in which she gave it to you.
There is a deeper sense of love that resonates beyond the material.
Yes.
And what she was giving was a deeper part of herself, maybe to make up for the time that we weren't there. But one thing that she always would say, I want you to be something. I want you to be something. And I want you to ensure that anything I can do to give you the opportunity, I'm going to do.
So let's fast forward to maybe a year ago, not even a year ago. You decided that you wanted some clarification about what had transpired.
I wanted clarification. I wanted closure.
Okay.
I wanted...
Resolution, probably.
Yes. I would embrace that term. Because the unspoken conversation that we had always had was what I needed. Because there was a part of me that I was missing. There was a part of me that didn't feel worthy of just being me. Because I felt a disconnect of who am I, who was I as a small person? What is my background? And sometimes I think if the more you know your background and your history, the more strength you have to move forward. I needed that. And from some prodding of friends, of some people, going from some people that really cared about me, they said, you need to go ask the unasked questions to her. And that's what I did, no more than 6-8 months ago.
So tell us about that. That was just very exciting to me to hear that.
Wow, it was exciting and refreshing and all the words you could ever use and even more. I came back and I asked my mom, I said, why did you give us up? And why did you come back? Because you could have left us there. And I think in talking through this, there also was a level for me that I needed to embrace who she was at that time. I needed to understand her so that I could fully embrace her as my mother. And she said, which I will never forget, that realistically she didn't want to give us up, but she started to have children at the age of 14. Now I want you to envision a young lady starting to have kids at the age of 14, and she had 4 boys year after year after year in 1950.
Wow.
And what the state told her at that point was she was too young to take care of kids. Because 14, by the time that she had my last brother, she was about 17. Well, by the time 14, I think she was probably 14, I want to say it again, 18. But the state mentioned that she didn't have the resources. And I asked her, well, why did you give us up? And she said, I didn't give you up. The state demanded that I relinquish the custody of you. And she said, I didn't give you up because of my willfulness. I gave you up because they told me I had to. So the next question I had to ask her...
But how did it feel just to even hear that?
That's a question like a song. That's an answer that resonates to the fiber of your being.
Yes.
Because that brings back a level of who you are. Who is this person? What I saw at that point was not only myself, I saw part of me deeper in her than I can even describe.
And the fact that you were wanted.
Yes.
That you were wanted.
Yeah. So here's the second question I had to ask. You were at the age that you could have kept going, that you didn't need to come back, that you could go and live a life or start a life that you wanted. Why did you even come back? And that's the part that always concerned me. Why did you come back? And her answer was an answer that riveted and smoothed my soul. Her answer was, I couldn't even fathom living life without you.
Oh.
And that was my healing moment. So I said, and this has been a lifelong process of hiding from the truth, of giving myself those lies to fulfill that hole that I was trying to fill.
And that nobody else could.
And no one else could fill but her. So I said, do me a favor, because it's important to know where your parents come from and their parents. I said, tell me about what you went through. Was it easy just coming back? And she says, I've never shared this with you. It was never easy coming back. When she went into the first courtroom, the judge said, I'm sorry, the state has taken them, and you cannot have them back.
So it sounds like they had terminated her parental rights.
Maybe. She went to a second court 2 years later, and the state said, I'm sorry. The son that is still here in Virginia, that has adopted parents here within the area, we will not give you the rights to see him. So keep in mind, I have 3 other brothers. That brother, the state said he will stay in adoptive custody.
Wow.
And I said, well, what kept you going? Because the state has already told you no. She said, they may have told me no about one. They didn't tell me no about the others that were out of state.
And you were out of state.
And we were out of state. So at that time, I was the youngest. My other brothers were there in the same setting with me. And she petitioned to have another court hearing. And in that court hearing, the judge said no. He said, why should I give them back to you? And she said, the judge said no. And she said, Judge, I have never spoken before the court before. Please let me address the court. And she says, whatever you tell me here today, you might tell me no, but I will keep trying and fighting for these kids with the last breath in my body. And the judge told her that day, he says, if you are woman enough to stand up in this courtroom and tell me that you will fight for these kids with the last breath, no one but a parent will do that.
Hello.
And he says, I will give you custody of the kids that are here. To hear that, to understand that, to embrace that truth, gave me a truth of everything I needed to say, this is where I came from, this is who my mother is, and if she has that type of determination, then what determination, what type of ability do I have in me?
Now, what is it that I'm willing to fight for and come up against obstacles for and fight, you know, the powers that be, not once, not twice, 3 times and then some.
There's an old saying, and regardless how many times you get knocked down, it makes a difference how often you want to get back to the fight. That's where my spirit comes from, because she was willing to get up when most people would have given up. So I tend, and a part of my mindset is there's nothing that can keep you down but you. I didn't develop that. I developed that from knowing and recognizing that I'm a part of her. And I'm her son as much as she is my mother.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to experience, and also the courage that it took for you to go to her, not knowing really what you were going to come out with. Because I recall at some point you were saying that one of the stories that you had in your head was that she only came back because she wanted the welfare check.
Sure. Sure. It's interesting. I wish I had done this 40 years ago. But there's a point and a time for everything. I had to grow personally and also mentally in order to be able to ask that type of questions.
So before we close out, I'm wondering, a lot of the cases that I've worked with, and the children have been removed from their biological parents for documented reasons of either neglect or abuse, and probably the cases that come up the most where there's a question about the child's return is where a parent has had issues with substance abuse, and whether there's being clean and sober going to be able to provide. And there's no doubt in my mind that many of these parents really do want and love their children, but they are just really are not capable and some are working on it and need that support. What would you say to a young person who is desiring that embrace from the parent and there is something keeping them from getting to them, when it could be questionable whether that parent is able to embrace them?
I would say that people do the best that they can do with what they have. That doesn't mean that they are uncaring. That means that they are doing the best. The difference we have to decide is, what will we do with our life? What will we do to move us from where we are to where we want to be, and also to help others move forth with us? That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So that basically means finding there's a purpose for your life, following your, setting some goals,
Sure.
and to pursue that.
I tend to tell people, Evelyn, goals are the fuel that take us to a high level of living in life. We all have some meaning, some difference that we came here to give. But we have to find that, and finding that passion, that one spark, that one element leads us to a higher level of living. It's not so much where we came from. That would be great if we all knew, but it's where we're going. And what legacy will we leave that people will say, either we were an example or either we were a warning. That makes the difference.
Wonderful. Well, you're both an example and a warning to me because you keep me on my toes. And I'm just so excited to have you in my life. And I'm looking forward to working with you and sharing with you to impact other young people's lives. And in closing, I would like to say to our Well, one, I want to say something to our birth parents who may be looking and your child is not living with you, that regardless of where you are, it's important that your child knows at least what your intent is, but be honest with your child and let them know that maybe if there's something that's keeping you from being able to be the parent to them that you would desire to be, or that they need you to be, at least let them know that you love them and that there are limitations, and be open to allowing someone to give them what they need that you aren't able to do. Be honest with our young people, because that's the most important things that's important for them to come to a point of resolve in their heart so that they can move on and fulfill their purpose in life. To our young people, I would like to say that if there is an opportunity for you to have a heart-to-heart talk with your birth parent or birth parents, as Wade, Mr. Randolph did, don't wait until it's way down the line. If you have questions, ask those questions now. If you need the help of someone to mediate, a counselor or another family member or a trusted mentor, please do that, because those questions that you have are valid. Sometimes people will try to tell you, well, just don't worry about it. You know, you got to live your life. But we know how important it is to have some type of understanding about where you came from and why you're on the path that you're on now. So I hope that you've been encouraged. I hope that you will be able to join us in our Foster Pride Empowerment Workshop. And I would like to say thank you. God bless, and do something special for a child's heart.
A mother's weeping.